In the middle of class, the alien general issued a challenge. The human girl didn't flinch send anyone in the middle of history class at the Galactic Academy. Something unexpected happened that would change the fate of a young human girl forever. It was a typical day, filled with the usual hum of alien voices and the occasional hum of a spaceship flying past the school's outer walls. The Galactic Academy was one of the most prestigious schools in the galaxy, with students from all over the known universe. Many species attended, each with their own unique abilities and strengths. Humans, though, were a rare sight at the Academy, often viewed as a curiosity by the other races. They were known for their intelligence, resilience, and the ability to adapt to any environment. But on this day, Sarah Montgomery would show the galaxy that humans had something else to offer: courage. Sarah sat in the front row, her eyes focused on the hollow display in front of her. It was a history lesson about the great galactic wars, and the teacher, a tall, blue-skinned alien with long tentacles for arms, was explaining the significance of the Eskrath Empire's rise to power. Sarah wasn't particularly interested in the lecture. She had heard it all before. But her mind wandered, and she found herself looking out of the large classroom window at the stars beyond. The galaxy was vast and full of mysteries, and she couldn't help but wonder what her place in it would be. Her thoughts were interrupted by a loud noise at the door. The entire class turned as the heavy doors to the room swung open with a force that rattled the walls. In walked a figure so imposing, so overwhelming, that the room fell into stunned silence. General Zyklor, the infamous alien general from the planet Eskrath, had arrived. His entrance was no less dramatic than his reputation. Standing over 7 feet tall, with muscles that seemed to ripple beneath his dark, reptilian skin, Zyklor exuded power in every movement. His eyes, glowing with an eerie green light, scanned the room. His presence filled the space like a storm rolling in, ominous and unyielding. Sarah had heard stories about him before. The general was a living legend, feared throughout the galaxy for his ruthlessness in battle and his brutal conquests. He had fought in countless wars and had never been defeated. His species, the Eskrath, were known for their strength and their ability to dominate weaker races, and General Zyklor was the pinnacle of that power. The class went silent, the alien students exchanging nervous glances. No one dared to speak. This wasn't a normal visit. Everyone knew that when the general arrived, it was either to issue a challenge or deliver a message. Sarah, however, didn't flinch. She had grown up hearing about Eskrath and their violent ways, but she had never been one to cower. Zyklor's deep, rumbling voice broke the silence. "I've come to challenge the strongest human in this class. If any of you are brave enough to face me, step forward." His words echoed in the room, and for a moment no one moved. Sarah could feel the tension in the air. The other students shifted uncomfortably, their eyes darting between the general and each other. She could see the fear in their eyes, but there was no fear in her heart. She had been raised by a military father who taught her never to back down from a challenge, especially not one meant to humiliate her kind. The general's gaze swept across the room, locking eyes with every student in turn. When his eyes met Sarah's, there was a brief pause. He smirked, clearly amused by the young human girl who dared to stare him down without a hint of fear in her expression. The other students looked at Sarah, their eyes filled with doubt. No one believed she could win. Zyklor was an unstoppable force. No one, not even the strongest warrior, had ever dared to face him and live to tell the tale. But Sarah didn't care about the odds. She had something they didn't have: the will to fight for what was right. With a deep breath, she stood up slowly, the classroom still in stunned silence. She could feel the eyes of her classmates on her, some with disbelief, others with pity. She could hear the whispers behind her back. "She's too young. She's too weak. She doesn't stand a chance." But she didn't need to prove anything to them. She only needed to prove it to herself. "I'll take your challenge," Sarah said, her voice steady. Her heart pounded in her chest, but she made sure no one could hear it. She would show the galaxy what humans were made of. Zyklor's smirk widened, revealing rows of sharp, jagged teeth. "You're brave, human, I'll give you that, but your bravery will not save you." Sarah didn't reply. She just stood there, her fists clenched at her sides. She could feel the weight of the general's words, but she wasn't going to back down. Not now. Not ever. She had a reputation to uphold, not just for herself, but for every human who had ever been looked down upon in this galaxy. The general turned and walked toward the door without another word, his massive form filling the doorway. "Follow me," he said, his voice low and threatening. "The duel will take place in the arena." The classroom erupted into whispers as Sarah made her way toward the door. She could feel the eyes of her classmates on her, some filled with awe, others with fear. No one had ever dared challenge Zyklor before. This was a test not just of strength but of willpower, of the human spirit, and Sarah was determined to pass it. The walk to the arena felt like it took forever. Sarah's mind raced as she tried to prepare herself for what lay ahead. She had no idea how she was going to defeat the general. He was stronger, faster, and more experienced than she could ever be. But one thing she had learned from her father was this: never underestimate the power of the human spirit. She had been taught to think outside the box, to use her brain as much as her brawn. And that's exactly what she was going to do. When they reached the arena, the other students were already gathered, filling the stands with eager eyes. The arena itself was a massive open space, surrounded by force fields that could simulate any environment. The floor was made of a metallic material that would withstand the force of any blow. The holographic generators overhead hummed to life, waiting to create a battlefield that suited the duel. Zyklor stood at one end of the arena, his posture relaxed, as if he were certain of his victory. Sarah stood at the other end, her feet planted firmly on the ground. She could hear the faint murmurs of the crowd, the anticipation hanging in the air like a thick fog. The gong sounded, signaling the start of the duel. Zyklor was the first to move, charging toward Sarah with terrifying speed. His massive claws glinted in the light as he swung them toward her, aiming to strike her down with one powerful blow. But Sarah was quick on her feet. She dodged to the side, her movements fluid and precise. Zyklor's claws slammed into the ground where she had been just a second before, sending sparks flying. The general growled in frustration, spinning around to face her. He lunged again, this time aiming to grab her by the throat and crush her. But Sarah was already moving, darting beneath his outstretched arms and landing behind him in one swift motion. She didn't hesitate. She launched herself at his exposed back, aiming for a weak spot she had noticed during the fight. But before she could land a blow, Zyklor spun around and caught her wrist in his grip. "Pathetic," he sneered, tightening his hold. "You cannot defeat me." But Sarah refused to let go. She grit her teeth and kicked out, her foot connecting with the general's shin. He stumbled back in surprise, giving her just enough time to break free. "I'm not done yet," Sarah said, her voice unwavering. The battle was just beginning. The arena was filled with the sound of Sarah's quick footsteps as she narrowly avoided Zyklor's attacks. She could feel the heat from his massive body as he swiped at her with his claws, each strike sending shockwaves through the air. The general's power was overwhelming, but Sarah had something else to rely on: her speed and her quick thinking. Every move she made was calculated, every step a strategy to stay one step ahead of her opponent. Sarah's heart pounded in her chest and sweat dripped down her forehead, but she didn't allow herself to panic. She had been trained for this. Her father had always told her that the key to survival wasn't just raw strength. It was the ability to think in the heat of battle, to use your environment, your instincts, and your wits. And that's exactly what Sarah intended to do. She ducked under another swipe of Zyklor's claws, rolling forward to get out of his range. The general roared in frustration, his eyes glowing brighter as he charged again. This time, he wasn't just trying to swipe at her. He was aiming to trap her, to overpower her with sheer strength. His massive arms reached out, trying to grab her by the waist, but Sarah was already moving. She spun to the side, narrowly missing the general's grasp. As she did, she noticed something that gave her an idea. Zeikler's movements, while fast, were becoming more predictable. His attacks were strong, but there was a certain heaviness to them. He wasn't used to being outpaced. Sarah's eyes flickered to the walls of the arena, the shimmering force fields that surrounded the battlefield. She had seen them flicker when Zeikler had slammed his claws against the ground earlier. If she could use that to her advantage, she might have a chance. She darted forward again, this time running toward the left side of the arena. Zeikler followed her, his footsteps heavy on the ground. His eyes never left her, and she could see the growing frustration in his expression. He was used to crushing his enemies in seconds, but Sarah was different. She wasn't backing down. She wasn't giving up. When she reached the edge of the arena, she turned quickly, using the wall to propel herself into the air. The force field beneath her feet flared to life as she jumped, creating a shockwave that sent a ripple through the entire arena. She could feel the energy crackling beneath her as she sailed through the air, heading straight toward Zeikler. The general's eyes widened in surprise, but he was too slow to react. Sarah's foot connected with his chest in a perfect roundhouse kick, the force of the blow sending him staggering backward. He slammed into the ground with a thud, his massive body shaking the arena as he landed. For a moment, there was silence. Sarah stood there, breathing heavily, her body aching from the intensity of the battle. She couldn't afford to stop now. Zeikler was down, but he wasn't defeated yet. She had landed a solid hit, but she knew it wasn't enough to end the fight. The general would recover quickly, he always did. As Zeikler pushed himself off the ground, Sarah's mind raced. She had to keep moving, keep him off balance. She couldn't let him regain control of the fight. She took a deep breath, focusing on her next move. It wasn't just about fighting anymore. It was about proving a point. She wasn't just fighting for herself. She was fighting for every human who had ever been underestimated, for every person who had ever been looked down upon as weak or insignificant. Zeikler snarled as he stood tall again, his reptilian eyes flashing with anger. His body was covered in dirt and blood from the blow, but he seemed unfazed. "You have no idea what you're up against, human," he growled, his voice low and dangerous. Sarah's grip on her fists tightened. "I know exactly what I'm up against, and I'm not backing down." With that, she charged again, this time aiming for his legs. She had noticed that the general's legs were slightly weaker than the rest of his body. If she could bring him down, if she could take out his stability, then maybe, just maybe, she could win. Zeikler saw her coming and swung his claws down toward her. Sarah ducked beneath the strike, rolling forward and using her momentum to kick at his legs. She hit him square in the knee, and the general let out a roar of pain. His massive body stumbled slightly, and Sarah pressed the advantage. She kicked again, this time at the back of his knee, and the general's legs buckled. Zeikler fell to the ground, but he didn't stay down for long. His claws scraped the ground as he pushed himself back up, his breathing heavy but still full of rage. Sarah took a step back, giving him room to rise. She had to be careful. She couldn't let him regain his full strength. She couldn't let him catch her off guard again. "You're persistent, human," Zeikler sneered, his eyes burning with fury. "But persistence won't save you." Sarah didn't answer. She didn't need to. She just kept her eyes on him, her body poised and ready for the next move. The general was faster than she expected, and his next strike came so suddenly that she barely had time to react. His claws slashed through the air toward her, but this time, Sarah was ready. She dodged, ducking beneath the swipe and using the opening to land a quick punch to his ribs. The blow landed with a solid thud, but it barely seemed to faze the general. He spun around, his tail whipping through the air like a deadly weapon. Sarah barely avoided the tail's swing, but she could feel the rush of air as it passed close by her. She had to be more careful. Zeichler was a force to be reckoned with, and the longer this fight went on, the more dangerous he would become. For a moment, Sarah's mind flashed back to the training sessions she had gone through in the past. Her father had always told her that the most important part of any battle was knowing when to fight and when to wait. She had been taught to be patient, to wait for the right moment to strike. She couldn't just throw punches and hope for the best. She had to outsmart him, outmaneuver him. And then she saw it. The opening. The one weakness she hadn't noticed before. Zeichler's left arm, his dominant arm, was slower than the rest of his body. It wasn't much, but it was enough. His strikes were powerful, but his left arm was fatigued from the earlier blows. This was her chance. With a burst of speed, Sarah darted forward, aiming for his left shoulder. She ducked under another swing from his claws and delivered a sharp jab to the joint of his arm. The general's eyes widened in pain, and for the first time since the duel began, he stumbled back. Sarah didn't give him a chance to recover. She pressed forward, her movements fast and precise. She landed another blow, this time to his side, and Zeichler let out a growl of frustration. He was beginning to slow down, and Sarah could see it. She was wearing him down, one strike at a time. "You're stronger than I thought," Zeichler hissed, his breath ragged, "but it won't be enough." "I think you're wrong," Sarah said, her voice steady. "It's always enough." And with that, she launched herself at him again, determined to finish what she had started. The battle was far from over, but for the first time since it began, Sarah felt something shift inside her. She wasn't just fighting for herself anymore. She was fighting for humanity's place in the galaxy, for their right to be seen as equals, for their right to stand up and be counted. And she wasn't about to let anyone, no matter how strong, take that away from her. Sarah's breath came in quick, shallow gasps as she faced off with Zeichler once again. The battle had been going on for what felt like an eternity. Her muscles ached, her vision blurred from the strain, but she didn't stop. The general was a towering figure of strength, his movements fast and precise, but Sarah was not about to give in. She had been pushed to the edge, but it was here in this moment that she could feel the fight turn. Her father's lessons echoed in her mind. Never stop moving, never stop thinking. The general was slower now, his movements less fluid, though still filled with deadly force. Sweat dripped from his scales, his breathing heavy, showing the first signs of wear. Sarah had seen it, the way he hesitated for a moment before every strike. The cracks in his armor, the subtle signs of exhaustion. She was wearing him down, piece by piece, blow by blow. This wasn't just about strength anymore. It was about who could outlast the other, who could outthink their opponent. Zeichler let out a frustrated snarl and charged once again. His claws swiped through the air with terrifying speed, but Sarah was ready. She darted to the side, her body moving in a blur. She could hear the hum of his claws as they sliced through the air, just inches from her face. Every movement felt like a dance, her mind calculating each step before she made it. Her body moved almost on instinct now, a reflex honed from years of training. She could see it clearly now. The general's left side, the side she had targeted earlier, was the key. That was where he was vulnerable. His left arm was slower, his balance off. It wasn't much, but in a fight like this, every little detail mattered. She could feel her heart racing, the adrenaline pumping through her veins as she focused all of her energy on exploiting that weakness. This time, when Zeichler swung at her, she didn't dodge. Instead, she slid beneath his reach and swept his legs out from under him. The general's roar echoed through the arena as he crashed to the ground, his claws scraping across the metal floor in a desperate attempt to regain his footing. Sarah didn't hesitate. She was on him in an instant. Before he could push himself up, she launched a quick series of strikes, each one aimed precisely at his vulnerable points. His ribs, his shoulders, his knees. She hit them all with the accuracy of a practiced fighter. The general grunted in pain, each blow landing with a satisfying thud, but he wasn't finished. His massive tail whipped around, aiming to catch her off guard, but Sarah was already moving, leaping out of the way just in time. Zeichler's frustration was palpable. "You're clever, human," he snarled, his voice laced with contempt. "But cleverness will not save you." Sarah's breath was steady, though her body was beginning to feel the strain of the fight. She was tired, but she could see it now. The end was in sight. She wasn't going to let this alien warlord crush her spirit. She was going to finish this. With a burst of speed, she ducked beneath another swing of his claws and pressed the attack, aiming for his left side once more. This time, her fist connected with his shoulder joint. The general let out a growl of pain, his body jerking back, but he quickly regained his composure. He spun around, swinging his massive arm in an attempt to catch her in the air. But Sarah was faster. She ducked low and rolled beneath his outstretched arm, her body twisting in a fluid motion. She was so close now, so close to taking him down. She could see the exhaustion in his eyes, the way his movements were starting to slow, the way his breathing had become labored. She knew it wouldn't be long before he couldn't keep up. The fight had reached a turning point. This wasn't just about strength anymore. It was about outsmarting him. It was about breaking him down piece by piece. The general growled again, his eyes narrowing with hatred. "You are a fool, human. You think you've won, but you've only delayed the inevitable." Sarah didn't answer. She didn't need to. The words didn't matter. The fight mattered. She had come this far, and she wasn't about to let him take that away from her. She had already proven to herself that humans weren't weak, that they could stand toe-to-toe with the galaxy's deadliest warriors. Now, she just had to prove it to the rest of the universe. Zeichler charged again, his body moving with a speed that belied his size. But this time, Sarah was ready. She sidestepped his attack and launched herself at his weakened side, her feet connecting with his ribs. The force of the blow sent him stumbling back, his body crashing into the arena wall with a tremendous thud. He let out a roar of frustration, but this time there was something different in his voice, something that sounded like doubt. Sarah didn't wait for him to recover. She pressed forward, determined to finish what she had started. She knew this was her moment. She couldn't afford to waste it. With one final, calculated strike, she aimed for his head, driving her fist into the side of his skull. The general's massive body crumpled to the ground, his eyes wide with shock as he fell. The arena fell silent as he hit the floor, the once mighty warrior now defeated by a human girl. The crowd of students watched in stunned silence, their mouths agape. No one had ever seen anything like this. A human had taken down General Zeichler. The battle was over. Sarah stood there, her body trembling with exhaustion, but she didn't feel fear. She felt something else, something powerful. Victory. She had done it. She had fought for her species, for herself, and for every human who had ever been underestimated. She had shown them that humans were not weak. She had proven that they could stand up against the most powerful forces in the galaxy. Zeichler groaned as he slowly began to stir, but he was no longer the imposing figure he once was. He was no longer the unstoppable general that everyone had feared. He was just another defeated enemy. Slowly, he pushed himself to his knees, his eyes still filled with anger but tinged with something else: respect. You have won, human," Zeichler said, his voice low and reluctant. "But know this is not the end. The galaxy will not forget this humiliation." Sarah didn't respond. She didn't need to, she had already won. She had shown the galaxy that humans could face any challenge, any enemy, and come out victorious. And that was something no one could take away from her. The arena erupted into applause as Sarah stood there, her chest heaving as she caught her breath. Her classmates, both human and alien, cheered for her, their disbelief slowly turning into admiration. Sarah had done the impossible. She had defeated General Zeichler, and in doing so, she had shown the galaxy that humanity was a force to be reckoned with. As the cheers continued to echo through the arena, Sarah looked around at the crowd. She had proven her point, and in doing so, she had proved something even more important. She had shown that humanity, against all odds, could stand tall, even in the face of the most powerful beings in the universe. And no one would ever forget the day a human girl took down a S-craft general. The arena was still, the sounds of cheering slowly fading as Sarah stood, her body aching from the battle. The weight of what had just happened hadn't fully hit her yet. She had defeated General Zeikler, the same general who had crushed entire fleets with ease, the same one who had never been challenged by anyone in the galaxy until now. But even as the applause from her fellow students echoed around her, Sarah's mind was focused on something else. The general was still on the ground, barely conscious, but his eyes flickered open, and there was a shift in his expression. The anger that had once filled his gaze was gone, replaced by something far more complex. He didn't speak right away. He just sat there, his body tense as he pushed himself up, his massive form still shaking with exhaustion. The crowd had gone silent again, watching the scene unfold with a mixture of awe and disbelief. No one had ever imagined a human could do this. No one had thought it possible. Zeikler finally pushed himself to his feet, his tail lashing in frustration. "You have defeated me," he muttered, the words almost painful to say. "No one has ever done that. I am the greatest warrior in the galaxy." Sarah stood a few feet away, her breathing steady but her muscles screaming for rest. She didn't respond immediately. She was too tired, too worn out to say anything that would sound important. Instead, she just watched him, knowing that his next words would be crucial. The battle was over, but what came next could change everything. The general's voice was filled with a strange mixture of grudging respect and disbelief. "Humans, I have underestimated you." He paused, looking down at the ground for a moment before lifting his head again, his eyes narrowing as if seeing Sarah in a new light. "You have earned my respect, human. I was wrong to think you would be weak." Sarah didn't flinch at the compliment. She wasn't doing this for praise. She was doing this for herself, for her species. The fight wasn't over just because she had defeated Zeikler in the arena. The war for humanity's place in the galaxy was just beginning. "You've proven something to everyone here," Zeikler continued, his voice less harsh than it had been before. "You've shown the galaxy that humans are not to be taken lightly, that you have strength in ways we never imagined." Sarah nodded slowly, her eyes still locked on the fallen general. She could feel the weight of the moment settling over her. The eyes of the entire academy were on her now, waiting for her to say something, to make her mark on the galaxy. But she wasn't one for speeches. She didn't need to boast or claim victory. She had done what she had set out to do, and that was enough. "Maybe it's time you and the rest of the galaxy learned what humans are capable of," she said simply, her voice steady. The crowd, which had been eerily quiet during the exchange, suddenly erupted into applause once again. It wasn't just for her victory, it was for the message that had been sent. Humans were no longer the underdogs. They were not weak, and they were not to be underestimated. Sarah turned and began to walk away, the adrenaline from the fight slowly starting to wear off. She was exhausted, every muscle in her body screaming for relief, but she couldn't stop now. She had made her mark, but there was still work to be done. As she exited the arena, she saw Commander Rill waiting for her just outside the doors. He had been watching the entire fight from the sidelines, his face unreadable. But as Sarah approached, he gave her a brief nod of approval. There was no need for words. She had proven herself not just to the general but to every student watching, every being in the galaxy. "Well done, Sarah," Rill said, his voice low but filled with respect. "Thanks," she replied, her voice tired but satisfied. She wanted to say more, but there was nothing else to say. She had done it. She had faced the greatest warrior in the galaxy and come out on top. That was enough for her, for now. The next few days were a blur. News of her victory spread quickly across the galaxy, and before long, Sarah found herself becoming the talk of the Academy. Students from all species approached her, some in awe, others with curiosity, but all with respect. No one had ever expected a human to be capable of defeating a S-Craft general. They had all underestimated her, and now they couldn't deny the truth. Humans had a place in the galaxy, a place that couldn't be ignored. It wasn't long before Sarah received a message from the Galactic Council. They wanted to meet with her. They wanted to talk about what had happened in the arena and what it meant for humanity's future. It was a formal invitation, one that would have been unthinkable just days before. The galaxy was changing, and Sarah had played a part in that change. But as she read the message, she couldn't help but feel a sense of unease. What would this meeting mean for her, for humanity? Would they offer humanity a place at the table, or would they continue to view humans as nothing more than an afterthought in the grand scheme of the galaxy? She didn't know, but one thing was certain. She had made her mark, and she wasn't going to let anyone forget it. The day of the meeting arrived, and Sarah found herself standing before the council, her nerves steady but her heart racing. The room was filled with representatives from every corner of the galaxy, alien species of all shapes, sizes, and colors, each one eyeing her with a mix of curiosity and caution. Zeikler was present as well, standing off to the side, his posture still tense, but his respect for her evident in the way he held himself. The council members began to speak, their voices a blur of different languages, but Sarah kept her focus. She had fought for this moment. She had earned the right to be here. Finally, the leader of the council, a tall and regal being with translucent skin, addressed her directly. "You have proven yourself in the arena, Sarah Montgomery," the leader said, her voice calm and measured. "You have shown the galaxy that humans are capable of more than we thought. But now the question is this: what will humanity do with this newfound respect? Will you use it to seek peace, or will you try to dominate like so many others before you?" Sarah's gaze never wavered. This was the moment she had been waiting for, the moment that would define humanity's future in the galaxy. "We'll use it to stand equal," Sarah replied, her voice clear and unwavering. "We'll stand equal with every species here, side by side, not as inferiors, not as conquerors, but as equals. We will be a part of the galaxy just like everyone else." The room fell silent for a moment. Then, slowly, the members of the council began to nod. The leader looked at Sarah for a long moment before speaking again. "Very well, humanity has earned its place." The words echoed in the room, and in that moment, Sarah knew that things had changed. The galaxy had seen what humans were capable of, and they would never be the same again. The days following Sarah's victory were a whirlwind of activity. The galaxy had been talking about her for days, and each conversation seemed to carry more weight than the last. She had faced the mightiest warrior in the galaxy and emerged victorious, and that victory had shaken the foundation of what many thought was possible for humanity. The Galactic Council had met soon after, and Sarah had stood before them, her heart steady, her resolve stronger than ever. She had answered their questions, made her case, and shown the galaxy that humans could stand on equal footing with any other species. She had spoken of humanity's desire for peace, for cooperation, and for a place in the galactic community, not as subordinates but as partners. Now, as Sarah walked through the corridors of the academy, she couldn't help but reflect on everything that had led her to this point. The fight with Zeikler had been brutal, but it had also been a turning point for her. It had made her realize something she hadn't fully understood before. Humanity had something no other species had. They had the ability to adapt, to survive, and to keep moving forward, no matter the odds. Her fellow students greeted her with smiles and respectful nods as she passed by. Some of them had seen her as an outsider before, an oddity among the aliens who made up most of the academy. But now, things had changed. The respect she had earned in the arena had carried over into the halls of the academy. People were no longer looking at her with pity or curiosity. They were looking at her with admiration. It wasn't just her victory over Zyklor that had won them over. It was the way she had carried herself before, during, and after the battle. She had shown them that humans were more than capable of holding their own in the galaxy, and now they respected her not just as a fighter, but as a leader. Sarah reached the training room and paused at the door. Inside, she saw Commander Rill, who was watching a group of students practicing their combat moves. He noticed her standing in the doorway and waved her in. "Sarah," Rill greeted her, his voice as calm and steady as ever. "How are you feeling after all of that?" Sarah took a deep breath and stepped inside. "Tired, exhausted, but also proud. I think we've finally earned our place." "You've earned much more than that," Rill said, his eyes serious. "You've shown everyone that humans can change the game. You've proven that we can be more than just survivors in this galaxy. You've proven we can be leaders." Sarah sat down on a bench, her muscles aching from the fight with Zyklor and the aftermath. She still couldn't fully believe what had happened. That fight, that moment, it had changed everything. And now she knew that the galaxy was watching. They were watching humans, not just as an oddity, but as equals, as capable beings worthy of respect. "I never thought it would be like this," Sarah said, her voice quieter now. "I never thought one fight could change everything, but it has, hasn't it?" "It has," Rill said, nodding slowly. "And that fight was just the beginning. What you've done, Sarah, will open doors for every human out there. You've proven that we're not just a small species at the edge of the galaxy. We're part of this galaxy, and we always have been." For a moment, they sat in silence, the weight of their conversation sinking in. Sarah had always known that humans were capable of great things, but now she had the galaxy's attention. She had opened the door, and now humanity had a chance to step through it. The door to the training room opened, and another student walked in, a tall alien with blue skin and 4 arms, one of the species Sarah had trained within the academy. The student smiled at Sarah, giving her a respectful nod. "Sarah, I just wanted to say that your fight was incredible," the alien said. "You've given us all something to think about. We didn't think humans were capable of what you did, but now we have a new perspective. You've changed the way we see your kind." Sarah smiled back, feeling a surge of pride. She had worked hard for that respect, and now it was being given to her. It felt good, but it also reminded her of the responsibility that came with it. The galaxy hadn't just seen her fight. They had seen what humanity could do when pushed to the edge, when they had nothing left but their will to survive. And she had to keep proving that. "Thanks," Sarah said, standing up and stretching her sore muscles. "But it's not just about one fight. It's about showing everyone what we can do from now on. We have to keep fighting, not with our fists, but with our ideas, our hearts, and our resolve." The alien nodded, clearly impressed by her words. "You're right. One fight doesn't define a species. But one fight can change how a species is seen, and you've done that." Sarah smiled and turned to Rill. "It's a new beginning for humanity, isn't it?" Rill met her gaze with a steady look of approval. "It is. But remember, Sarah, with this new beginning comes a new responsibility. You're not just a warrior anymore. You're a leader. You've shown the galaxy what humans can do in combat, but now it's time to show them what we can do in the greater scheme of things." Sarah nodded slowly. She understood. It wasn't enough to win one battle. She had to keep pushing forward, not just for herself, but for all of humanity. They had to prove themselves not just as warriors, but as thinkers, as creators, as builders of a future where humans stood side by side with every species in the galaxy. As the days went on, the news about Sarah's victory continued to spread. The Galactic Council held a special session to discuss the implications of what had happened in the arena, and they invited Sarah to speak. For the first time in history, a human was being given a seat at the table, a place where decisions were made about the future of the galaxy. It was a moment that felt surreal to her, but it was also a moment of clarity. This was the beginning of something greater. Sarah stood before the council, her nerves steadied by the thought of how far humanity had come. She had always known that humans had a place in the galaxy, but now she could feel it in her bones. This was their time. It was time for humanity to take its place among the stars. The council leader, a tall, elegant being from the planet Tikar, addressed Sarah with a voice that was calm but filled with respect. Sarah Montgomery, your victory in the arena was not just a triumph for you, it was a triumph for your species. You have proven that humanity is not only capable of surviving in this galaxy, but that it can thrive and lead. What will humanity do with this moment of recognition? Sarah took a deep breath and stepped forward, her eyes scanning the faces of the council members before locking on the leader. Humanity will use this moment to show that we are more than just survivors. We are builders. We are thinkers. And we are ready to join you all as equals. Not to dominate, not to be dominated, but to work together and create a future where every species has a place. Together, we can build a galaxy where no one is left behind. The room fell silent for a moment. Then, one by one, the members of the council began to nod, their expressions softening as they realized the truth of her words. This was the future of the galaxy, one where humanity could no longer be ignored. The leader of the council stood and addressed the assembly. Let it be known, then, humanity will have a place in the galaxy, not as an outsider but as an equal. And with that, Sarah Montgomery had not only proven herself as a warrior, she had proven that humanity had a place among the stars. The future was wide open, and the galaxy was watching. The journey was just beginning.